Hi everyone, Katie with Trans Refuge again. Took quite a long break from the YouTube channel and just making content in general. A lot of stuff's been happening both in my personal life and in the world at large. I would say on the political front, things are looking very unstable and a little bit kind of scary. And maybe I'll make a video about that, but not today. So I've been really busy. Work has been just off the charts busy, which is a good problem to have. I'm in sales, so that means that I'm busy making sales, and that's a good thing. But on the personal side of life, I've been kind of struggling with a lack of real-world friends, and I don't know, I'll probably get some criticism for this and people telling me that, you know, you're a millennial, you spend too much time online and that kind of thing, but I don't think that it's a millennial thing. I see it with boomers, I see it with Gen Z, I see it with Gen Xers, I see it across the board everywhere that real-world relationships are struggling to both exist and survive. And that's tough. So recently I've been kind of struggling with some things emotionally happening in my personal life and really tried to engage some people in my life and try to get them to talk to me or let me talk to them, I guess, about the things that I was struggling with. And I've struck out. Like nobody in real life really wants to get their hands dirty, I guess. They don't want to get involved at a personal level with somebody else. And that kind of hurts. And I don't think I'm unique in that. I'm not making this video to say, woe is me. I'm making this video because I think it's something that's common. It's all over the place geographically. And I don't think that I'm the only one that's having this issue. So that's why I'm making the video. It's because I figure if I'm dealing with it, a lot of other people are probably dealing with it. And maybe this video might help somebody. Might give somebody some encouragement to keep on going when maybe they don't want to. So, with that said, we're going to do something today, or I'm going to do something today that I haven't done in a while. I'm going to look at something from the Bible, and I know I haven't been doing a lot of that lately, and I think that's healthy. I think that sometimes you need a break. For anybody who doesn't know my history, I came from a very fundamentalist Christian background. And like, it was very rigid. Like, you read your Bible every day. You were basically a bad person if you didn't. And it was a competition, you know, to see how much time you could spend reading the Bible. And, you know, it was really an obsession. And we'll talk a little bit about that whole performance-oriented religion in this discussion. But for me, I need to back off once in a while. I need to take a step back and say there's more to life than religion and beliefs in the Bible. There's a lot more to life than that. So, you know, I purposely said, you know, I'm going to take a break from all this stuff. I'm not going to be so heavily focused on religious content because, one, I don't think it's healthy for me, and two, I don't think it's healthy for people out there that might be watching videos to, you know, just always have this religious stuff pumped into their heads. So, but today I'm going to do it again. Might make one or two more videos in the near future looking at religious stuff, especially in the political context of our day, but I don't want it to become the overarching theme of the channel because I don't think it's healthy. So we're going to look today at Luke 10. Most people know this as the parable of the Good Samaritan. And the reason I wanted to look at this is I was thinking about it because of my struggles with finding help. Finding somebody, other than a therapist that you're paying to care about your problems, finding a, real world friend that will sit one-on-one with you and talk through your issues with you is becoming increasingly difficult. People don't want to do it. I've been there with people. I remember, it would have been about 2009. I had a former friend from high school that I hadn't seen in like a decade had contacted me on Facebook. This is like way back when people were just starting to use Facebook. And he had recently become homeless, and it was winter time. It was like below zero. He had nearly died the night before from hypothermia because he was sleeping outdoors in somebody's garage, and they came out and found him and kicked him out and called the cops and stuff. But, this guy contacted me out of the blue. I hadn't seen him in years, and, he just say, hey, I don't know what to do, and I just thought I'd reach out to you. And I want to preface this by saying I'm not telling the story to like blow my own horn and say, look at me. The reason I tell this story is because of the impact it had on his life. Not because of anything I did or because I think it was, so holy of me or whatever. It's because of how things turned out for him. It's an example of why this topic is so important. So I took this, I said, hey, where are you at? And he told me, and I said, I'm going to come get you. Went and got this guy. He hadn't eaten in a couple days, so I took him to it was Perkins. Took him to Perkins, and it was snowing out. It was really cold, too. It was like 10 below zero. Usually it doesn't snow when it's that cold, but for whatever reason it was. And, brought him dinner, and we talked. We talked till like 2 in the morning. And, got him a good meal. And he didn't have anywhere to go, so I said, well, come back to my apartment. You can sleep on our couch until we can figure out a place for you to go. So he had a warm place to stay that night, stayed on the couch, and the next day, because we had a 1-year-old, actually I don't think he was even 1 yet, it was our oldest kid, and, little apartment, I said, look, I can't have you here permanently, so we got to find a place for you to go tonight. So I made a bunch of phone calls to relatives and people of his. There was some family animosity and some things that he was up against, and eventually we found a relative who could take him the following night. So that left him with just one night. He's got to find a place to live. And so what we ended up doing, my spouse and I, we rented a hotel room for him. And he stayed warm. He had a place to sleep. He was safe. And, then that following night after that, he went and stayed with a relative. And life got back on track for him after that. And he was able to reconcile with some relatives. And the whole process was a process of healing for him. And he's doing pretty good today. And I don't run into him too often, but when I do, he always tells me, thank you, you saved my life. And, I wouldn't have the relationship with my daughter and my relatives, and all this stuff, because I really was thinking about killing myself at that point. And I always think of that interaction with that old friend of mine when I read this story that we're going to get into. Because you don't know what the downstream effects are on people. You meet their need in the moment. 2 years, 10 years down the road, you don't know how that's going to help them grow, help them to be so much more than they could have been. So let's get into the story. So this is in Luke chapter 10. We're going to look at verses 25 through 37. So starting in 25, it says, "And behold, a lawyer stood up and put Jesus to the test, saying, 'Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?' And Jesus said to him, 'What is written in the law? How does it read to you?'" I just want to say, if you're not familiar with the Bible and what these terms meant, a lawyer, which is what this guy was, it's not like what we think today of a lawyer, of like somebody that goes into a courtroom and defends somebody who committed a crime or is accused of committing a crime or something. A lawyer was somebody who was an expert in the religious laws. So they were like an expert on how to live godly. Okay. So like think of somebody who is always able to tell you what you ought to be doing. Yeah, this isn't always a positive influence on your life. Somebody who's kind of I don't know if know-it-all is the right word, but they're an expert on how to tell you what you're doing wrong and how to live a godly life. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so Jesus asks him, okay, well, what do you think the law says? What does it say to you when you read it? And he answered and says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus said to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" There's a huge problem growing today. It's been there throughout human history, but it's like right now it's really intensifying, and it's exclusion. It's saying I don't have to care about and love and respect certain groups of people. You know, the term used here is neighbor, but what it means is somebody that you have like a civil duty to care about. You know, just because they're around you, they're a human being and they're around you, you should care about them. And people today are saying, okay, well, but there are certain groups we don't want to. So we'll talk a little bit about the groups at the time this was written, how it applies to today. Jesus said to him, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he encountered robbers, and they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. And by coincidence, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed on the other side." Just went right on past him. Guy's laying there bleeding on the ground, half dead. Doesn't stop to render aid, doesn't care. Keeps going. In fact, not only does he keep going, he goes all the way out and around him to keep going. To stay as far away from that problem as he can. Likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. So again, he went way over to the other side of the road just to get away from this guy. It's like, that looks like trouble. I don't want to get involved. Whatever's going on with that guy, whoever beat him up, that might happen to me. I'm just going to get as far from that guy as I can. I don't want to get involved in this guy's problem. But a Samaritan who was on a journey came upon him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion, and came to him and bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them, and he put him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. On the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, "Take care of him. And whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you." Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell into the robber's hands? And the man said, "The one who showed compassion to him." Then Jesus said to him, "Go and do the same." So let's talk a little bit about the characters in the story. It's a guy, we don't know who he is, but we know where he's coming from, we know where he's going to. He's coming from Jerusalem, which was the religious capital of the day. It was, the holy city. It's where the temple was. But it says that he was going to Jericho. Now, Jericho was a city that was situated pretty much right on the border between Judea and Samaria. We're going to talk a little more about Samaria and the Samaritans here. So this guy was, if we make an allegory out of this, Jerusalem is the place you want to be. It's the religious capital. It represents in this story, righteousness. And Jericho is a city that's right on the border between Judea, which these people, the Jews of Jesus' time, viewed as the good kingdom. It's right on the border between that and Samaria, which was the bad kingdom. Don't want to give you a whole history here, but Israel had been divided between the north kingdom and the south kingdom. So there was Judea and there was Samaria. And Jericho's like right on the border, straddling the two, kind of. And so it was kind of viewed as like this in-between place, is kind of shady, in a sense, morally, certainly spiritually. And people that would leave Jerusalem to go there, in a symbolic sense, would have been viewed like you're abandoning what's good and right to go be and do something immoral. None of that's really true. In the case of this guy, he was probably just going to take care of some personal business. But with a lot of these parables, there's symbolism, so we have to explore it. But anyway, let's keep going here. So he's going to a place, that was kind of viewed as like the wrong side of the tracks. All right, we'll put it that way. And by coincidence, a priest was going down on that same road. Why was the priest going there? We don't know. Why would a priest be leaving Jerusalem to go to Jericho? Good question. A lot of hypocrisy in religion. But anyway, he's a priest. He is a man of God. He is supposed to be the guy that is the intercessory between man and God, right? This is the guy that should cure the most. So he's coming along and he sees this guy bleeding on the side of the road, half dead. And he goes out and around the guy. Man of God. Then a Levite comes. Levites were the servants in the temple. They kind of made sure that the operations happened. Think of them like the COOs of the temple. They made sure that the operations took place, that everything was taken care of, that, the building and the needs of the priests and everything, they kind of made sure everything happened. They greased the wheels, to put it very simply. There's more to it, but I don't want to drag this out. So he comes along. Guy's still laying there, still half dead, still bleeding all over the place. Does the exact same thing. He has nearly the same religious education and everything as this priest. He should know. What does God want? Goes out and around. Get as far away from this guy and his problems as he can, goes out and around, keeps going. And again, there's the question of why is he going there? Why is he on this road? But a Samaritan comes along. Well, what's a Samaritan? It's somebody that lives in Samaria. The Samaritans were viewed as they were both racially mixed between Jew and Assyrian, and there are some other racial influences from the region, but mostly Jew and Assyrian during the Assyrian captivity. But they were also theologically mixed. A lot of spiritual influences from the Assyrian culture entered in, and it mixed in with the Judaism of the time. And so they had like this mixed hybrid religion. And it was seen as very impure by the Jews of Judea. And so everything about this guy would have been very, he would have seemed like a bad guy to the people that were hearing this parable. The least likely to do the right thing. So he comes along and he sees this guy. He doesn't pass by on the other side of the road. He doesn't keep going. He stops and he renders aid. Wraps up his bandages. Well, how did he do that? I'm sure he wasn't carrying bandages with him. He probably tore strips off his own clothing to fashion bandages and tie them on this guy. This guy not only got his hands dirty, I'm sure he got blood on him. But he was willing to make the sacrifice for somebody else that he didn't even know. So he felt compassion, bandaged up his wounds. It says poured oil and wine on them, and there's a whole spiritual significance to that. But that also would have been the first aid of the day. They didn't have like antibacterial ointments or Bactine or something you could spray on the wounds. It was, it was very basic. So he renders first aid. He's treating his wounds as best as he could. Put him on his own animal. So, I'm sure this guy was traveling on the animal, gets off, puts this guy on and walks beside, puts himself in a lower position and puts himself in a place of discomfort to have to walk so that this wounded guy can ride the animal. Takes him to an inn and basically says, do what you got to do to help this guy. I got to continue on my journey. Here's some money as a down payment. Excuse me. Whatever more costs that he incurs, I'll pay when I come back. So, Jesus, of course, then asked the question, which of these three was the neighbor to the guy? And, the guy, gets the question right, says it was the third guy. But in today's culture, things are so polarized. Nobody wants to get involved in the problems of another person. And a lot of it's because of fear. Well, what if that person's a Republican? What if that person's a Democrat? What if that person's gay? What if that person's transgender? What if that person, is transphobic? What if that person is this? What if they like guns? What if they don't? What if they're pro-Second Amendment? What if they're anti-Second Amendment? What if they're pro-abortion? What if they're anti-abortion? All these things. There's so many ways you can divide people up. And people make a lot of choices about whether or not they want to get involved in helping somebody else based on what they're comfortable with. Granted, I don't endorse people put themselves in extreme danger to help somebody else, especially if there are better ways to handle the situation. But I guess what I want to do is encourage you. If you see somebody that seems like they're struggling, maybe they're making comments that seems like they really want to reach out for help but they don't know how. Or maybe they're not, but you can just tell that, this person seems like they're having a really hard time. Maybe body language, maybe comments they make. Take the risk, get involved, talk to them. Now, I have lots of online friends, and as much as I appreciate that, I went through a time recently where I really kind of needed real life friends, somebody I could talk to face to face. I couldn't get anybody. Nobody wanted to talk to me. It was hard. It was really hard because I was going through some really hard things. And, you know, I just want to say it's worth it. Take the risk. Get your hands dirty with people. Get involved in their problems. Because you don't know, 6 months, a year, 10 years down the road, that little bit of effort and that little sacrifice make a huge difference. So I hope you're having a great week. It's really hot here. In fact, even here in my air-conditioned office, it's hotter than usual, and I feel kind of uncomfortable. I think I might make some more videos. We'll see. I'm pretty busy, but have a great week, and do your best, okay? Bye.